What's going on, guys? It's Nick here, back with another video. Today's video, I want to take a look at the top 10, go over what I think it should be in order. I do have my first set of just initial rankings posted on the website. That's pretty exciting. First look at the 2022 season. But know that the actual rankings are not up yet. This is just like a bare bones ranking set. Just wanted to get it out there because a lot of people were asking what the initial take is after the draft. So you can check that out. Real rankings obviously are coming. But yeah, we have a first look at the rankings on the website, thefantasyfootballadvice.com. So if you want to follow along, you can do that. But today's video, just going to look at the top 10. Number 1, Jonathan Taylor. I think it kind of has to be Jonathan Taylor, unless something happens to change our minds. Like, I just think everyone's going to start with Taylor this season. He's had back-to-back just dominant seasons. Age is obviously not a concern. He's only in year 3, and he was a relatively young rookie. Over 1,400 yards, 12 touchdowns in that rookie season, then over 2,100 yards and 20 touchdowns in year 2. The only knock people can really have about him, right? He's got the rushing, he's got the touchdowns, is, well, the receptions, right? He's not McCaffrey, he's not Austin Ekeler, he's not going to go out there and have 100 receptions. How much do you really care, though, when someone has over 2,000 yards and 20 touchdowns, right? And let's be honest, he's got 36 and 40 receptions in back-to-back seasons, so he's not exactly like a zero in the receiving game, right? 5.5 yards per carry last season on 332 rush attempts, and that was against defenses that knew he was getting the ball. What else were they going to do? And that's the last 2 years, really. Corpse of Phillip Rivers. They have a highly mediocre Carson Wentz. Defenses knew they couldn't do that much in the passing game. They had to just feed Jonathan Taylor. And it's the same thing with like Derrick Henry. Defenses know, but what are they going to do, right? And just Jonathan Taylor just seems to be getting better and better. And the offense is actually going to get better this season. I know Matt Ryan's declining. Matt Ryan is not what he used to be, but he's still better than Phillip Rivers. He's better than Carson Wentz. And so I think they're going to have a good season. I don't think it'll be as easy for defenses to just load the box against him. They will if they'll have to, right, to stop him. But it's not going to be as easy. So I think Jonathan Taylor has to be the consensus 101 right now. At number 2, it's a close second, but I think it's pretty clearly Taylor at 1. At 2, I'm going to go with McCaffrey. I'm sure that's going to upset a lot of people, especially those of you who have been burned like the last 2 seasons. But since his rookie season, in points per game, 13, 5, 1, 1, and 8, thanks to 6.2 career receptions per game. That's an insane number, right? 6 receptions per game. Even if you're playing in like a half PPR league, not full PPR, that's an extra 3 points. Then add on the reception, like yardage. Then add on the touchdowns, right? It's just an insane floor that he adds. The touchdowns will be there. He still has rushing ability. He can just perform in every single area. There's no way he walks out of a game with a bust unless it's due to an injury. And I think that that's pretty important to understand. Like, there are plenty of running backs in the second and third rounds, and even some in the first round that, like, they have their down weeks, right? They have great ceilings, but they have weeks where they score single-digit fantasy points. It just happens. Over McCaffrey's career, in games that he's played at least 40% of the snaps, which is basically just like he didn't get hurt, he has finished with at least 10 fantasy points 81% of the time. That is absurd, right? And if you exclude his rookie season, just look at after his rookie season till now, that number is 95%. He's not going to bust as long as he stays healthy. Of course, that has been true the last 2 seasons, and we've seen him get injured, right? But you have to understand that any of these running backs could get injured. There are very, very, very few players in the NFL we can consider injury prone, and I wouldn't say that with McCaffrey. You just have to assume he's going to stay healthy, and if you want to pass on him, then I guess you can do so, but I wouldn't pass on him because he's been hurt the last 2 seasons. Anyone can get hurt. And if we're talking also about floor, right, I'm saying, well, like, he's not going to bust, right? Every single week he's going to go out there. He's not going to put up a 0. He's also got the highest ceiling of any running back, right? In 2018, if we want to look at his dominant season, he had over 30 half PPR points. That is insanely difficult to do in half PPR 4 times, at least 19 half PPR points in all but 2 games. That's a ceiling. Compare that to Derrick Henry's 2,000 rushing yard season in 2020. the same 4 games, over 30 fantasy points. But Derrick Henry was held under 19 9 times in 16 weeks. McCaffrey not only has that double-digit floor, he basically has a floor of like 20 half PPR points whenever he's healthy. Again, it's only the health the last 2 seasons. We'll see what happens this year. I'm going to assume he stays healthy, and so I have him at number 2. After those top 2, I see a tier break, and we get down to number 3 with Austin Ekeler. He was super unlucky in 2020 with touchdowns, but then fell on like the other end of that spectrum last year, scoring 20 times. The team did draft Isaiah Spiller in the 4th round, but Spiller's not a threat to Austin Ekeler, right? Especially with that blazing, 4.7 speed. I think it was like 4.69. Just awful, right? Not fast at all. I think they want Spiller to just be that like consistent early down number 2. So not like an early down back, but someone who, like Ekeler basically gets all of the 3rd down work, but someone they can occasionally mix in because they don't want to give Ekeler 250 plus carries and 100 receptions, right? They know that like it's difficult for any human being to like withstand that much volume over an entire season, especially now that we have, 17, and just like an extra game, 17 weeks. So I would say that the adding of Spiller is going to hurt Justin Jackson. It's going to hurt Larry Roundtree. I don't think it has any real impact on Ekeler. That's been a role they've been trying to fill. They've been mixing in other backs the last few seasons since they've gotten rid of Melvin Gordon. They've been trying to kind of find that since then. They haven't done a great job of doing so. I guess Jackson was like fine, but they haven't found someone that they love. They're hoping that Spiller is that person, but again, I don't think it has any real impact on Ekeler. I would not be concerned. You're projecting him the exact same way you were last season, which means we should expect, 12 to 14 touchdowns in that kind of area, 70 plus receptions, maybe in that 70 to 80 range, around 180 to 200 carries. Remember, they don't want to just like load them up on the ground, but we love that. Carries are the least valuable form of volume for running backs. You will always take a target over a carry. It comes with more yardage potential. I guess technically they both have the same potential. You can score in the play, but on average, you're gaining more through receptions than you are on the ground. Then you also, in most cases, at least get half, maybe a full point, even if they don't go anywhere. So I have him at 3. I just think that everything that he has, it's basically just the first 2 have a lot more upside in one of 2 areas. Jonathan Taylor, a ton more upside on the ground, probably has more touchdown potential, although we just saw, Ekeler dominate in that area. And then McCaffrey, obviously, more potential in the receiving game. But Ekeler, I think, is a really solid number 3. And you really trust that offense as well. You know that the Chargers offense is going to be good. 4th overall, first wide receiver, Cooper Kupp. I'm very interested to see where Kupp ends up going this season. I would imagine it's around this range, in this like 4 to 6 kind of range. I have to think he'll be the number 1 wide receiver off the board. But the question is really, when do people start attacking the wide receiver position? He's coming off one of the greatest seasons we've ever seen, right? 145 receptions, 1,947 yards, and 16 touchdowns. Just absolutely incredible. He had over 20 half PPR points in 10 of 17 weeks, going under 12 once. It was phenomenal. You knew every single time he was going out there, the dude's dropping 20, occasionally jumping up into 30 fantasy points. There's no reason, there's nothing to indicate that they're going to stop feeding him this season. If anything, it's possible that Odell is gone, and we already saw Robert Woods leave the team. They do bring in Allen Robinson for agency, but the chemistry between Stafford and Kupp is unreal, and it's not like Allen Robinson's going to walk in here and like overtake Kupp, right? This is Kupp's offense. He's going to be good. I think the case against him here is just that he's a wide receiver, right? There are a lot of really, really good wide receivers available in the late 1st round, early 2nd round. As you make your way into the late 2nd round, even into the early 3rd round, there's a lot of other wide receivers you could do, whereas we do see a huge cliff at the running back position. And given our research on the site, those draft strategy articles, we know that it is definitely optimal to lean running back early. So I'll be very interested to see exactly where he does end up going, but right now I have him at 4. At 5, I've gotten Derrick Henry. Finishes first in points per game, half PPR scoring last season, a cool 2.2 above Jonathan Taylor, which is nuts. I mean, the season that Jonathan Taylor had to be over 2 fantasy points per game higher than that is incredible. And even only playing in 8 games last season, he was running back 16 overall, and he was on an above average amount of playoff teams. So even though those teams did not have him for half of the fantasy season, he still did so well in those first 8 weeks that he provided those teams with enough of an edge in their record to get them into playoffs at an above average rate. That's how valuable he was before going down. Also, he returned from the foot injury. It was like, I don't remember exactly what part of the foot, but it was a fractured bone in the foot. Returns last postseason, was given 20 carries in the return. Don't even factor that in. The only thing you can say in factoring that in is being like, oh, if he's going to get, like 300 carries, any person could get hurt, right? If you're getting that much volume, especially as you get up there in age, which he's starting to do, I'm still fine with his age, but he's starting to get older, anyone getting that much volume is at risk of getting hurt. But don't factor this injury in. He literally returned in the postseason last year, and he's got an entire offseason to fully heal up. Like, he's totally fine. Don't factor this injury in at all. It would only be the volume. But really, you're going to complain about the volume. You'd be like, oh no, he gets too much work, right? Come on. You want people getting a bunch of work. My knock on him is more the offense, right? Treylon Burks, Robert Woods, if he's good to go. I mean, he's a 30-year-old coming off a torn ACL. I don't know how he's going to recover from this. And Austin Hooper. I mean, that's awful, right? So you've got to think that like the total scoring of this offense is going to be down. And if teams were loading the box before when they had A.J. Brown, what are they doing now? You've got a rookie is probably your best receiver. You got Austin Hooper. Like, who are you throwing to? So unless they make some moves before the season starts, I have to think that teams are going to just completely sell out to stop Henry. Again, like I alluded to before, that you can't really stop Henry. Like, there's just so much you can do. But that's the concern, is that he's like the only person on this offense now. It's at least possible that teams are able to put 9 defenders in the box every play, and that limits his effectiveness. At 6, got Dalvin Cook. He is coming off a bit of a down year by his standards. Obviously, by most people's standards, a great year, but by his standards, a little bit of a down year. Set a 4-year low, like a trailing 4-year low in catch percentage, yards per reception, receptions, while setting a 3-year low with only 6 touchdowns, ultimately finishing 11th in points per game. So if you got him, I don't remember exactly where he was going, but it was probably like top 3 last season, finished 11 points per game. That's obviously not great. And I believe he was on a below average amount of playoff teams because of that, because you kind of overspend if you got him. He was a top 3 running back, though, in points per game in 2019, in 2020, and it was really just the touchdowns last season. If he hadn't been so unlucky in touchdowns, then there would not be a discussion in ranking this high. You'd honestly be looking at this saying, hey, we're getting insane value here. Top 3 running back in 2019 and 2020, okay? If you look over his career, he scored a touchdown in 1 of every 25 touches. That's just a general ballpark for how many touchdowns he's going to score. And so if you give him the same on average, so per touchdowns last season, he should have scored around 11. And that kind of makes sense. We should expect around 10 to 12 touchdowns for Dalvin Cook with the potential to score 15, 16 if he gets lucky in a season, not 6. And if you add those 5 missing touchdowns on average in, so if he had just like an average season last year, it bumps him up to 4th in points per game, right behind Ekeler and right ahead of Mixon. And so you would have, if he was just average in touchdowns, a top 3 season, a top 3 season, and a 4th season. And you're getting him at 6th overall as, what would this be, the 5th running back? That's a value, right? It just doesn't seem like a value because last season he wasn't incredible. The one knock people have on him is the injuries, right? He can just never play a full season, but I don't care, right? I'm not playing him in the games where he's hurt, and you're probably drafting his backup. We'll see who exactly the backup's going to be this season. There's a little bit of debate there. Take his backup late in the draft. And if you told me I'm going to get 14 healthy games out of 17 from Dalvin Cook, I'm taking him in the mid-first round. The only thing I'm scared of is if he only plays like half a season, which has not been the case over his career. He has played, in that like 13 to 14 game range. That's missing 2 or 3 a season. That's totally fine. You can figure it out for a few games. If the rest of the games, you're getting a really, really valuable running back. At 7, I have the final player in tier 2. That's Najee Harris. As a rookie, he led the NFL in touches. That was something we talked about last season was a possibility, but you thought it was at least like a less than 50% outcome, right? You're saying it's a possibility. It wasn't like likely to happen. Goes out there, leads the NFL in touches, finishes with 9 more than Jonathan Taylor and 47 more than Joe Mixon, who was 3rd. That's an insane amount of touches. And I know that like people are going to argue, well, the touches are probably going to come down, right? Because Big Ben was so bad that they had to give Najee Harris the ball because they didn't want Big Ben dropping back. And when he did drop back, he looked like 4 feet in front of him and just dumped it off to Harris or Deontay Johnson every play. So if the offense changes at all, then that's not going to happen anymore. But we need to understand that he would have to lose 81 touches just to tie for 4th most. So he can still lose a ton of touches, a ton of targets, a ton of carries, and he'd still be like a top 5 player in touches per game. He's going to be amongst the league leaders once again. And there's no reason to think that's not going to happen because there's no one on the depth chart that's going to push him for work. No one. There's no talent behind him. Unless they trade for someone for some reason, they're not going to do that. They sign a running back. Is there really a running back on free agency right now that you're scared of if you have Najee Harris on your team? So obviously he's going to get a billion touches in year 2. He could even just improve as a player. And so definitely a guy that you're taking in the 1st round. Even if you don't think he's going to be efficient, that many touches means he's valuable in fantasy. At 8 and 9, I have Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase. I've yet to decide like fully how exactly I want to rank those two. Right now, again, I have it Jefferson and then Chase, but I could be pretty easily swayed in either direction. This is definitely going to be one of those decisions that we break down as part of those Thursday videos where I talk about like different draft decisions, because I think a lot of people are in the same boat. Everyone knows they're incredible, right? Everyone knows they're awesome, but who do you take, right? When you're on the clock, that's a difficult decision to make. Both are going to be focal points of their offense. Both are young in their career. Both are on like an upward trajectory. Like, who do you take? Right now, I have Jefferson just because of a mixture of volume and touchdown potential. Jefferson had 39 more targets than Chase last year, and I would expect him to win that battle again. Not only has Minnesota talked about being a little bit more aggressive in the passing game this season, but also the Vikings offense is just a tad more condensed with a little bit, I guess, fewer weapons, because if you're Jamar Chase, well, T. Higgins is still a really, really good wide receiver. And I'm not saying Adam Thielen is bad, but they're just on different trajectories in their career, right? T. Higgins is kind of ascending in his career, getting better as a player. Adam Thielen is, continuing to suffer injuries, getting older every year. You'd think that the volume split is going to continue to shift and get more and more towards Justin Jefferson, especially potentially in the red zone. That's what I talked about with touchdown potential. It's not that I think Jefferson could score a ton more touchdowns than Chase. It's just that Jefferson has been really, really good, scoring 7 and 10 touchdowns, because when they get into the red zone, Kirk Cousins seems to only focus on Adam Thielen. If he starts to shift a little bit of that focus to Jefferson, we might see that 7 and 10 spike a little bit into like 13 or 14 touchdowns. And if he's already been the wide receiver 8 and 4 the last 2 seasons on 7 and 10 touchdowns, if he starts spiking, he can easily be the wide receiver 1. And again, I'm not saying that Jamar Chase cannot be the one, but he did already have 13 touchdowns. He's got a little bit less room to grow from that number. And again, because I think the volume is going to be a little bit more towards Jefferson, that's what I have. But again, both incredible. Both deserve to be late first round picks. Finally, at number 10, I have Joe Mixon. I think you could easily go with Devonta Adams here. I think you could easily go with Alvin Kamara. I've just chosen to go with Joe Mixon. Again, a little bit based off not taking another receiver here just because of that drop off at running back. It's a cliff. Once you get after the first 2 rounds, there is a very, very big drop off in not only talent, but just our assuredness that these guys are going to be getting the volume on not only early downs or not only late downs, like third downs, but just like total, right? There's a lot of running backs that as you start getting to 3rd, 4th, 5th round, It's just like, well, they're not going to be featured, or they're not going to have a lot on early downs. If you can capture these guys who have the potential to play on all 3 downs, that's a lot of upside. And I know that Mixon is a frustrating player to own, but he was great last season. Over 1,500 yards, 16 touchdowns, 42 receptions. Those are really, really good numbers. And the only changes have been positive, right? They still have that core of Burrow, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Boyd, and Mixon. That's a really, really good core. And they improved the offensive line in free agency. They spent their draft picks on improving the defense. Like, this is a team that is expecting to make another Super Bowl run. And Mixon is going to be a big reason why they're able to do that. I fully expect him to put up running back 1 numbers again. And I fully expect him to be worth a late first round pick. And so I have him at 10. So that is my top 10 right now. It'll change infinite times over the next 4 months, but that's why fantasy is fun, right? We're going to analyze every single player this season from multiple angles. So make sure you subscribe so you don't miss out on any more of this free content. And if you want to see my rankings as they change, or you want to check out the most in-depth draft strategy project ever done, then you can check both of those out at my website, thefantasyfootballadvice.com. That, my friends, is the end of this one. Hope you all did enjoy. If you did, how about hitting the like button? And how about subscribing to the channel if you're new here? Thanks for watching.